Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. I never planned to open the door to my past that afternoon, but sometimes the past knocks like a polite guest and waits on the porch until you invite it in. My ex-husband's son, Ivan, stood there with a nervous smile, holding a paper bag from the corner bakery and a look that said he had rehearsed something important all the way over. I told myself to breathe, to be kind, to remember that time rearranges people the way a river rearranges stones. The sky was layered with soft gray, the kind of weather that lends itself to real conversations. I stepped back and he entered cautiously, as if my living room held memories made of glass. Evan and I hadn't spoken much since the divorce. Our partings had been tidy on paper and messy in the heart, and he was young enough then to be loyal to what was loudest. He placed the bag on the kitchen counter and glanced around like he was checking for exits. I'd offered tea because coffee felt too sharp for the edges between us, and he agreed with an awkward relief that made me want to smooth the air with my hands. We sat at the small round table by the window, the one that has seen grocery lists and birthday candles and quiet breakfasts after long nights. Outside, the maple leaves swayed gently, green easing toward gold. Evan wrapped his fingers around the mug as if gathering courage from the heat. He had his father's eyes, but there was something gentler there now, like a storm had passed and left him careful with sunlight. "I should have called," he began, then shook his head. "Actually, if I'd called, I might have lost my nerve." I smiled. "Then I'm glad you trusted your feet." He exhaled, and some of the strain left his shoulders. We did small talk in little doses. Work, the new apartment he was renting with a friend, the way the bakery switched to a different kind of flour, and everyone pretends not to notice. I watched his hands as he spoke. He worked them like a craftsman who knows every tool has to be held the right way, even words. I could feel a conversation gathering itself between us, like a tide considering the shore. "What brought you today?" I asked, not pressing, just giving him space to put a shape to it. He stared at the steam for a long second. "I've been carrying something," he said, "and I figured I should stop making it heavier." It was the simplicity that struck me. Not a speech, not a preface full of explanations, just the admission that a weight existed. I felt my own chest loosen as if it had been bracing for impact, and instead received a hand on the shoulder. "I'm here," I said. "Take your time." He nodded, grateful, and let silence do some work on our behalf. I noticed the small details because details keep you steady. The quiet whistle of my kettle cooling, the faint tick of the wall clock, the way the light softened the lines in his face. When he finally looked up, his eyes were steady. "I was unfair to you," he said. "Back then, when everything fell apart." A memory stirred, careful and complicated. The week his father packed boxes. The way the house felt like a staged play when the actors skip a scene. I remembered Evan standing in the doorway, angry on behalf of someone he loved and confused by all the parts adults keep off stage. I had understood, even as it hurt. Still, hearing the words now, "unfair," arrived like rain on a parched garden. "You were young," I said. "Loyalty is heavy. I never faulted you for carrying it." He swallowed. "Loyalty, yes. But I think I'd also wanted a villain. It made the story easier to hold." The honesty landed gently, yet with the weight of something true. I felt both seen and forgiven, and I realized I had been waiting a long time to not be the villain in someone's version of our story. He reached into the paper bag and pushed a small box toward me. Inside, a cinnamon roll spiraled like a warm, forgiving galaxy. "Peace offering," he said, trying a smile. "You used to buy these after parent-teacher nights." We laughed, soft but real. The room, which had felt like a waiting room for months, suddenly felt like a living room again. I didn't just come to apologize, he added. There's more. Something I should have said a long time ago, and something I need to ask. The way he framed it told me we were arriving at the heart of it, but he didn't rush, and I didn't pry. He studied the maple leaves. I watched the way his jaw tightened, then released. Between us, the steam thinned into the air like a gentle permission. Even, I said, whatever it is, we'll take it one sentence at a time. He nodded, eyes bright in a way that had nothing to do with tears and everything to do with relief. That's all I'm asking, he whispered. One sentence at a time. And in that small exchange, I felt a door swing open, a quiet, careful door to a room we had avoided for years. The past didn't vanish. It rearranged itself into something we could walk through without knocking anything over. The kettle clinked on the stove as it settled completely, and I realized I was ready to listen with my whole life. The next words didn't come fast. They arrived in fragments, like shells washed onto shore one at a time. Ivan leaned back slightly, as if letting the chair hold him while he gathered the right pieces. The maple branches outside brushed the window with that slow rhythm trees use when they want you to notice they are older than your memories. I folded my hands together and waited, not impatient, just present. You know, he began quietly. It took me a long time to admit that adults can hurt too. That was not the direction I expected. I nodded slowly. Adults bleed on the inside, I said softly. We just learn to hide the bandages. He swallowed, his throat tightening just enough for me to see the movement. Dad always told me he didn't regret anything. But I've realized people say that when they're afraid of how deep regret can go. It stunned me how simply he said it. He spoke like someone who had spent nights sitting with his own thoughts, not trying to outrun them anymore. He went on, voice steady but fragile, like a thread holding a picture frame together. When he left, he continued, he told me he would move on easily. He told me you didn't need us. And I believed him, because it was easier than believing that he was the one who didn't know how to repair what cracked. I exhaled slowly, not anger, not sadness, something more like recognition. There had been a long stretch of time after the divorce when silence felt like a second language, where feelings didn't disappear, they just grew softer so they could fit inside small parts of me quietly. I never stopped caring about you, I said gently, even when we stopped being in the same picture. His jaw tightened again, but this time he didn't look away. I know, he said. I think I always knew. I just didn't let myself admit it. For a moment, the air in the kitchen felt thick, like the room was holding its breath with us. Then I noticed something else. Relief had replaced some of the strain in his shoulders. It was subtle, the way a tight knot loosens after you work at it long enough. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The edges were softened, handled many times. He didn't open it right away. He just tapped it gently against the table. This, he said, is what I came to show you. He placed it between us, but didn't slide it forward yet. I wrote down everything I couldn't say out loud, things I didn't understand then, things I was too stubborn to ask, and things I'm brave enough to say now. He finally pushed it toward me. I didn't open it. Not yet. I rested my hand lightly on top of it, so he could see I didn't treat it carelessly. You don't have to read it now, he added quickly. I just needed to give it to you so it wasn't living inside me alone anymore. There was something profoundly human in that sentence. Sometimes, giving a truth to another person isn't about answers. It's simply about not holding the weight by yourself anymore. We sat like that for a moment. No rush. The silence didn't feel like a gap. It felt like a page turning. I finally broke the stillness with a question, not to pry, but to understand the shape of the moment. Why now? I asked. He offered a small, almost shy smile. Because I'm tired of keeping the past in storage like it's a box I'm afraid to open. And because I realized you never slammed the door. You just waited until I learned how to knock. Outside, a single leaf drifted from the maple tree and landed against the glass. It was the exact shade between summer and autumn, transition. And I thought in that small, quiet moment that maybe healing doesn't come when you chase it. Maybe it comes when someone finally says, "I'm ready to talk." He rested his palms flat on the table. "There's more I want to say," he whispered, "but I don't know if I'll say it right." "You can take your time," I said. "I've waited this long. I can wait through a few pauses." His eyes softened, and I could feel it. This was only the beginning of what he had carried. The paper beneath my hand felt heavier than paper. It felt like a key to a room we were finally stepping into. Avon didn't rush into the next part. He stood up for a moment, walked to the window, and looked outside like he needed the comfort of the familiar neighborhood to give him the next sentence. I could see how carefully he was managing himself, not with restraint, but with respect for what this meant. I stayed seated, both hands still resting on the folded paper like it was a living thing, and I waited. I realized waiting is not passive at all. Waiting is an act of love when it's paired with patience. "You know what I remember the most?" he said finally, still looking at the maple tree. "It wasn't the arguments. It wasn't the house getting quieter. It was you running the dishwasher at night." I blinked. That memory caught me by surprise, not because it wasn't true, but because it was so ordinary. "The dishwasher?" I asked, trying to connect the dots. He nodded. It was like your way of saying the day was complete. Like no matter what happened, you finished the day clean, even when things were messy between you and Dad. I sat with that for a moment. I had never thought of it that way. I just knew if I left dishes overnight, they felt heavier in the morning. He turned back toward me, and there was a quiet ache behind his eyes. Not a painful ache, something more like a bruise that finally stopped stinging. "When Dad and I moved out," he said, "I tried to keep that habit, but the apartment was different, and he didn't care about finishing the day clean. He always said, 'We'll deal with it tomorrow,' but tomorrow turned into another tomorrow. And I think that was when I first realized something was wrong." He sat again, and this time he didn't look away. "I used to think you were the difficult one, the one who didn't bend. But now I see you were the one who held everything together longer than anyone should have had to." He paused, and the room felt suddenly like it contained a truth we should have spoken years ago. "Dad and I don't talk much lately," he said, "not because of anger, just because I think he doesn't know how to talk to people who know him too well." That hit me in a place I didn't expect. Age teaches you that silence between people is sometimes not emptiness, it's self-protection. "I never wanted you to choose sides," I whispered. "I always hoped time would make a bridge, not a wall." He nodded slowly. "I think I built the wall myself, but I'm ready to build the bridge now." There was a sudden small comfort in knowing he saw the difference. He glanced toward the paper again. "Some of what I wrote, it's about the night you and Dad decided to separate. Things I overheard, things I misunderstood." I waited, letting him decide the pace. He continued, voice softer. "You said one sentence that night that I never forgot, even though I pretended it didn't matter." He took a slow breath, like he needed the air to hold him steady. "You said, 'We can't keep pretending we are who we used to be.'" His voice trembled just slightly. "For so many years, I thought that meant you were giving up. But now I realize you were being honest about something painful. And I think honesty scared me more than anything." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "I came today because I finally understand that telling the truth is not what breaks people. It's what gives them a chance to stop breaking." Outside, the sky shifted from gray to a muted pale blue, as if it too had decided to lighten a little. "And," he added, eyes searching mine, There's one more part of the truth I still need to say, something I never said to you directly." I felt my throat tighten, not with fear, but with the gravity of whatever sentence was coming next. He held his breath for a moment before the words came out. Not dramatic, not loud, just sincere in a way that made the room lean in with us. "I blamed you because it was easier than blaming the person I'd admired," he said. "It took me years to admit that I didn't just lose a father figure in that divorce. I lost you too. And I think I've been grieving that without knowing what to call it." I felt something shift in my chest, not like a wound reopening, but like a knot finally loosening. There was no anger left in me, just softness, just reality, just the truth sitting plain on the table between us. He rubbed his thumb over the edge of the coffee mug like it was a nervous habit he'd had since childhood, and I realized he looked older and younger at the same time. "And there's one more thing," he said. "I wanted to tell you that I saw you try. And I didn't say anything because it was easier not to believe it. But I saw it, and I never forgot. There are moments in life when words don't land. They settle. They sink in like rain to soil long waiting to be watered. I didn't rush to respond. I let the moment breathe. I reached out and placed my hand gently over his. He didn't pull away. He just closed his eyes briefly, almost like he was allowing himself to stand in that truth. "You're here now," I finally said. "That means more than any sentence from the past." He nodded. His eyes were damp, but steady. He wasn't broken. He was opening. "And I need one more piece of closure," he whispered. "I need to know something. When it ended between you and Dad, did you hate him?" It was a question asked by someone who needed permission to hold two truths at once. I shook my head gently. "No, I never hated him. I mourned the version of us that never learned how to stay honest with each other. But hate was never part of it. Hearts don't heal through hatred. They heal through acceptance." He let out a breath he had been holding for years. Then he smiled, small, almost shy, but real. I think that's the sentence I needed the most. The room suddenly didn't feel tense or heavy anymore. It felt warm, safe, like a childhood bedroom you thought you outgrew until you realize it still smells like comfort. We didn't dive into every detail of the past. We didn't try to rewrite anything. We simply sat there as two people acknowledging the same map, but from different roads. When he finally stood to leave, he placed his hand gently on my shoulder, a gesture simple, respectful, steady. "Thank you for letting me come," he said. "Thank you for choosing to knock," I replied. At the door he hesitated, then turned back. "I'd like to visit again. Not to talk about the past. Just to be in the present, I guess." I nodded. "My door is open." When he walked down the path, the late afternoon sun rested on his shoulders like a quiet blessing. I closed the door softly and leaned against it for a moment. Not overwhelmed, just full. The kind of fullness that brings peace instead of weight. Later, when I finally unfolded the paper he gave me, I didn't rush through it. I read slowly, and each sentence felt like someone setting down something heavy, piece by piece. I folded it back carefully when I finished, not because it hurt, but because it was precious. Sometimes we forget that closure isn't a door slamming shut. Sometimes it's a window opening just enough to let a new breeze in. And in that quiet kitchen, with the sun fading gently against the maple tree outside, I realized something. He didn't just bring truth to my table. He brought healing. And maybe that was what the past had been waiting for all along.